Prime Minister Keir Starmer has signaled that the UK is bracing for a fresh wave of punitive US tariffs under President Donald Trump's so-called Liberation Day economic agenda, warning that Britain will not hesitate to act in the national interest if vital sectors come under threat.
People are going to be worse off when Trump's tariffs come into effect, won't they? That's the truth, and that's what you're dealing with.
Well, I don't think anybody wants to see tariffs.
But you acknowledge we are going to get them.
Well, look, we're working hard on an economic deal which we've made rapid progress on, and I hope we can make really speedy resolutions on. But look, the likelihood is there will be tariffs. Nobody welcomes that. We're obviously working with the sectors most impacted at pace on that. Nobody wants to see a trade war, but I have to act in the national interest, and that means that all options have to remain on the table.
No trade war, that sounds to me like you're saying you don't want to immediately introduce retaliatory tariffs. You're going to take your time.
Well, I'm not going to get ahead of myself, but I am talking to the sectors most impacted, and I think what they want most is a calm and collected response to this, not a knee-jerk response. We are, of course, negotiating an economic deal which will, I hope, deal and mitigate the tariffs. That's, I think, where most people would want this to land. Can't predict the future on that, but we're working hard on it. But I don't think a trade war is in our interest. But of course, the national interest is what I am guided by, and therefore we must have all options on the table.
Just one more thing on Donald Trump. You have worked so hard with him. You have pulled your punches. You haven't criticised him publicly. He suggested prospects of no tariffs when we were at the White House. And now this. Do you feel played by him?
Look, the US is our closest ally. Our defence, our security, our intelligence are bound up in a way that no two other countries are. So it's obviously in our national interest to have a close working relationship with the US, which we've had for decades, and I want to ensure we have for decades to come. And I don't question that in any way. Obviously, we are discussing economic deals. We're well advanced on it. These would normally take months or years, and in a matter of weeks, we've got well advanced in those discussions. So I think that a calm approach, a collected approach, not a knee-jerk approach, is what's needed in the best interests of our country.
Speaking ahead of Trump's planned announcement on Wednesday, Starmer acknowledged the likelihood that the UK will be among the nations targeted in the former president's sweeping trade offensive, which is expected to introduce blanket import taxes on foreign goods, including a 25% levy on imported cars. Nobody wants to see a trade war, Starmer told reporters, but I have to act in the national interests, stressing that all options remain on the table. The Prime Minister said his government is working at pace with industries most vulnerable to the looming tariffs, which are likely to deal a blow to high-end British manufacturers like Aston Martin and Rolls-Royce. Business Secretary Jonathan Reynolds echoed the Prime Minister's concerns in an appearance on Sky News, confirming that the government anticipates the U.S. tariffs will apply broadly and affect every country, including key allies such as the UK. Only the president himself will ultimately know what the plan in place will be, Reynolds said. But we expect that to affect every country. That's the working assumption. The centerpiece of Trump's latest trade salvo is a sweeping 25% import tax on all foreign-made cars, a move that strikes at the heart of the UK's luxury automotive sector with implications for exports, jobs, and regional economies. The White House has also signaled a potential 20% general tariff on UK products, reportedly linked to Britain's current VAT levels, a measure viewed by some in Westminster as provocative and economically aggressive. The announcement, part of what Trump has provocatively dubbed Liberation Day, marks a dramatic return to his America First trade playbook. It follows a recent hike on steel and aluminium imports, already in effect, and sets the stage for broader protectionist policies likely to ripple across global markets. though Starmer has so far resisted domestic pressure to impose retaliatory tariffs, including calls from within his own party to target American car imports, such as Tesla's. No, 10 is keeping all retaliatory options open. When it comes to tariffs, the Prime Minister has been clear he will always act in the national interest, said Starmer's official spokesman on Monday. We've been actively preparing for all eventualities ahead of the expected announcements from President Trump this week, which we would expect the UK to be impacted by, alongside other countries. The timing couldn't be more delicate. Britain has been angling for a new bilateral economic agreement with the US since Brexit, and Trump's latest move threatens to upend months of quiet diplomacy. While Whitehall remains publicly committed to negotiation and de-escalation, there is growing anxiety that the UK could find itself embroiled in a transatlantic trade spat with high political and economic stakes. In the absence of immediate concessions from Washington, attention now turns to how Starmer will balance his pledge of pragmatism with the mounting domestic pressure to defend British industries, and whether Trump's tariff blitz will spark a new era of economic nationalism on both sides of the Atlantic.
Lee Anderson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Since the Labour government came to power, over 30,000 people have entered our country illegally, and the Prime Minister says he's very angry about this. But he's not as angry as the British taxpayers would have forked out £1.2 billion a year to keep these illegal invaders in our country. So does the Minister agree with me that anybody arriving here illegally should be detained and deported?
Madam Deputy Speaker, we have a duty to ensure that those arriving on our shores, if they claim asylum, are properly processed. The party opposite prevented itself from doing that by becoming obsessed about the Rwanda scheme and left us with a huge backlog. We will speed up immigration processing so that we can deal with those people, protect those who have a right to be here, and send back those who have failed. And I hope that the honourable gentleman will welcome the steep increase in returns and removals that I've just announced.
Conservative MP Lee Anderson delivered a blistering critique of the government's handling of illegal migration during a pointed exchange in the House of Commons, warning that lenient asylum policies are playing directly into the hands of people smugglers. Anderson, the outspoken MP for Ashfield and a staunch advocate for tougher immigration controls, raised concerns during a QS session with a Home Office minister questioning why individuals arriving illegally in the UK are not being immediately detained and deported. "I want to see illegal migrants detained and deported," Anderson told the chamber, voicing what he described as a growing sense of frustration among his constituents and across the country. However, the minister's response, that all individuals arriving in the UK must be afforded the right to claim asylum, appeared to strike a nerve. Anderson reacted with visible disbelief, later warning that such remarks would be received as good news by criminal gangs profiting from illegal channel crossings. "The people smugglers listening to this response will be jumping with joy," Anderson said. "I despair for our beautiful country." The tense exchange highlights the deepening divide within conservative ranks over immigration policy, as pressure mounts on the government to deliver on its promises to control the UK's borders and crack down on unlawful entry. While ministers continue to uphold the UK's international obligations to process asylum claims, critics like Anderson argue the system is being exploited and risks losing public confidence. Anderson's comments reflect a growing chorus on the conservative backbenches demanding a more hardline approach, including immediate detention for illegal entrants and fast-track deportations for those without legitimate claims. Government sources, meanwhile, maintain that current policy strikes a balance between compassion and control, though with migration remaining a hot-button issue ahead of the next general election, that balancing act is only becoming more politically fraught.